I sought therapy for us because I believed that I wanted a renegotiation, and without help, he wasn't going to take my opinion with as much respect or weight as his own.
Mm-hmm.
I bring things to you that mean a lot to me, and you are very
dismissive.
yeah.
Do you recognize any of this kind of...
I understand why she feels this way.
No, but do you recognize that in yourself?
I recognize why she sees that. So I know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
But it'd be like me telling you what one side of this. And thinking it's the whole side.
Mm-hmm.
No, I got it. Yeah.
How would you describe the move he just made?
Well, it's really dismissive. And he just made this comparison about like, well, it's like showing you one side of this and telling you it's the whole side. It is the whole side. There's another side, but it is the whole side. And he goes on to kind of like make that side go away.
So he's pretending to be able to see both sides of the story, but he can actually only face one side of the story. So it's not that Annie and Dr. Orna can't see both sides. It's actually that he can't face both sides. He's the one who's struggling to see that multiple people have accurate perceptions of reality, not just him.
Yeah,
Do you think he's dismissive?
definitely. Yeah, he's been very dismissive right there.
And it's so interesting that he knows. It's obvious that these two have talked quite a bit, and Annie's ability to hold on to herself in connection with him is actually quite impressive, where she can face him and still say what she needs to say. And so he knows that she's going to say he's dismissive, and he refuses to deal with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've had this conversation before, for sure.
Sure. And he's making it clear that he's not going to do anything about it.
Look at it that way, that's where you're going to sit.
Mhm.
If you look at it a different way, you'll see something else.
Right. Okay. So
And there's-
wait, stop. So
Absolutely.
this is exactly what I was talking about. I'll say, don't say that. That's mean.
Mhm.
And then the other side. So here's the one side is that's mean. Those are ugly words you're throwing at me,
Mhm.
or like making me feel small. But the other side is that you can't wait to show me is what a great and supportive husband you are, and how supportive and da, which just makes my side irrelevant, which is your whole point of doing it.
Babe, that was a terrible example.
You are being mean to me,
I already said I understand why you feel that way.
but you don't.
Yeah, no, I do. I
Like,
still do.
But okay, but if
I
you
did when I said it, and I still do it. I
okay,
haven't
then,
lost track
so
of it.
what part of
I think he does understand why she feels that way, because he knows that he's tormenting her right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, what he's doing right now is pretty mean. Like when he says, like, she's really putting a lot of thought into how she's talking to him, and then he brushes it away and says, that was a terrible example. He's throwing the whole thing out. He could ask a clarifying question. He could ask for an example, but he's just saying, no, like, there's nothing important about what you just said, and she put a lot of effort into what she just said.
So no matter how hard Annie works at talking to him about what she wants him to change, he is going to completely refuse to look at anything that she says to him.
Yeah, it seems that way. I mean, she frames it as like he's going to quickly bring the focus back to what a great and supportive husband he is. And the thing is, like, he can be supportive in a lot of ways and be mean. They can both be true at the same time. But like you said, it's the side that she's trying to get him to look at that he's refusing to look at. Like, he won't spend time or say anything substantive about what it is that he does that is mean.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think he can't face that or won't face that?
Seems like there's some black and white thinking here where he's having a hard time, like, incorporating a nuanced sense of self, like seeing himself as a person who can be good in some ways and mean in others at the same time, that those can coexist in one mind. What do you think?
I think for Mao to be able to face the reality of what's happening here, because Annie's right about him. He is mean and he is dismissive. For him to be able to face that, he would have to be able to face that reality without falling into a pit of shame. I think it feels so bad for him to face what's actually true about him that he's gotten really good and really intense about avoiding reality about who he actually is and what he's actually like, especially avoiding the reality of what it's like to be married to him. He's not an easy person to be married to. He's not an easy person to talk to. He's not an easy person to be with. And he refuses to face that. I think it's driven by this intense distress that he feels when contemplating the idea that he is dismissive and mean. I don't think he can face that idea.
And you might be right. He's so smooth that the distress is not really coming through at this point. But that's part of the difficulty of connecting with him, is that he's going to hold up this facade of being like completely unruffled, and that he's the reasonable one in the room is kind of how he presents it, and he's the least reasonable person in this conversation
By a long shot. Annie and Dr. Orna are both being kind, they're being respectful, they're not being dismissive, and they're not being mean. And he's the one who's doing those. And he's also managing to distort reality in the room enough to make them both kind of doubt themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That is on you. Like,
But what? Just say what part is on you.
Well, there isn't a part. Look,
Why do you think he paused there?
He's just not willing to go there, I guess. What do you think?
I think he heard himself saying, so he was about to say, well, there isn't a part that's on me. And then he's like, oh, that sounds really bad.
That's going to sound bad.
So he has to
Yeah.
find a way of saying the same thing in a way that doesn't sound quite as bad. So he stopped himself because he wasn't doing good enough job of getting around what's real. So just saying there isn't a part on me, he's like, oh, I'm not going to get away with that. So I'm going to try to find a way that I am going to get away with, which is exactly what he tries to do here.
it can happen in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he really believes that? It can happen.
He
in
doesn't
certain
think it's
situations.
important. I mean, like, I think he's taking a position of, sure, if you don't have the full picture, you might think that I'm being mean.
Mhm.
But if you had the full picture, you would know that, in fact, I'm a perfect person.
Yes. And so when he says it can happen in certain situations, I don't think he believes that, because she comes up and says, okay, well, tell me what your part is. And he's like, oh, there isn't a part. He completely denies it going forward. So he tries to throw out this kind of false offering of like, yeah, sure, this can happen in certain situations. But when she presses him to get closer to what that might be, he refuses to name it.
Mm-hmm.
But the constant in those other situations is the way that you're approaching it. This is,
What move did he just make?
So he's positioning it that she's the one who's making it go this way. So if she wants this to change, she would have to be the one to change,
Yeah,
because it's actually her fault, not his,
that's exactly
that
what
he
I
ends
see
up
it.
being mean.
Yeah, so he says that can happen in certain situations. So like apparently bad things happen, and what he says, the constant in those situations is that you're the one who's driving it. And so, he's being pressed to answer this idea of like, how do you contribute to this problem? And he says, well, let me talk to you about how you contribute to the problem. That's what he does. That's the switcheroo. Really, really smooth.
Dynamic.
Yes.
That's a couple dynamic. I mean, you're saying to Annie, look, there's a part that is yours, which is the way you approach me.
Mhm.
What part's yours?
But say, and here's where I can meet you. Here's
Yeah,
my
I mean,
part.
Look, I'm struggling to find what that is because you're
Come on, you can.
No, I'm being sincere. When you already have it, you're is that missing from your
Just say it
relationship?
again. Even if you're doing that effort, you can just say, here's what I'm trying to do.
Here's what I'm already successful at doing.
That's my favorite line. So he will talk about, he would acknowledge failures in the past. it's really interesting where she's really trying to push him to acknowledge that he could do things better in his relationship, and he just comes back and turns it around. Here's what I'm successful at doing, which I'm not making any mistakes. I don't make mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that's interesting about how he's positioning it is that when they were talking about sex, where he's bringing forward something that's important to him, then he's the one that decides whether he's getting the thing that he wants and that's important to him. And the fact that she's putting a lot of effort in doesn't satisfy him. He's still ultimately the judge of whether he is getting it. But when they're talking about what she wants, he again positions himself as the judge of whether she's getting it. And so he's the one that determines whether he's doing the right thing and whether she's doing the right thing.
So the tides are turned where when he's the one who evaluates her effort and he's also the one who evaluates his effort. And at no point
Right.
At no point does he acknowledge that she has an ability to assess what's real and what's not real.
Yeah, and this is the very thing she was trying to bring forward about, like, you don't take me seriously.
Yeah, he doesn't.
That's not the same thing.
I think you'll get way more traction if you say, rather than say, I've been doing it all this time, is if you say, I can try harder to not be dismissive. What triggers me is when you talk to me in this way or that way, but I still want to keep making the effort to be respectful.
Yeah, that's insulting
To whom?
to me. That's a
Bear that
ridiculous thing to say.
But it'll be good for your marriage.
I won't do it, and I don't want it.
Dr. Orna talks to him in a kind and warm and respectful way, and I see him kind of reaching the end of his ability to worm his way out of this here, and so he goes for this move, which is that you're insulting me, and she handles that by saying, "Can you handle being insulted?" Even though she wasn't insulting him, but she doesn't try to convince him of that. She's just like, "Okay, if this is what you feel," she says, "bear the insult." But I like the way she's working within his reality here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really skillful. And the other thing I'm noticing is this is the same move he made when Annie was getting really close in and accurate. Is he said that's a terrible example. So it's the same thing that when he's losing room to maneuver around what they're saying, then instead of engaging with what they're actually saying, he just accuses them of doing something really unfair or wrong. So it's a super defensive move on his part.
Dr. Orna's ability to hold a warm regard and a positive regard for him is impressive here. She's not falling for the move he makes, and she's also not being aggressive or disdainful or dismissive towards him as a person. So she's still regarding him as a human being who's worthy of being loved without yielding to the moves he's making.
Mm-hmm. So she is taking at face value the idea that there is an insult here to bear. And that's where I'd be inclined to go in a different way. And I think that could work with some people, what she's doing. And I like watching her work that way. But I'd be inclined to go a different direction where I push him to slow way down, because I think bringing up the idea that this is an insult is just an evasive maneuver. I want him to slow way down and lay out what is the insult in this.
Yeah.
And not get away with just saying that's insulting.
Right, because she does let him get away with just reframing reality. And so he brings this false reality into the room that someone just insulted me, which didn't happen. I think it would be really good for Annie to hear someone actually deal with the moves he makes. And I know that's not, Dr. Orna doesn't really have that kind of direct style, but I think it would be really good for Annie to see someone actually try to do what you're talking about and slow down and say, explain what's insulting about that.
Yeah, because all Dr. Orna has actually done is try to offer him in a really thoughtful, respectful way. Here's the next step for addressing your partner's concerns. That's it. Here's how you could do a little bit better at this. And
Sure.
He's like, how dare you? Well, There's no insult there.
No, there's definitely not an insult.
If you were to give me everything I ever wanted by doing that, I'd say no. I'd rather have nothing than have that.
Her face is worth $1 million right there. She's like, what did you just say? It's really interesting.
Well, and it's actually quite interesting to watch like her face. So she's having this big reaction to it, which makes a lot of sense because that's a wild thing to say. Annie is sitting there sipping water like she hears this all the time.
It doesn't bother Annie at all. Annie's so used to this.
So,
And he's like, it's another Tuesday. And Dr. Orna's like, what is happening?
so I mean, Mal's just doubled down where he's like, not only is an insult, it's such a serious insult that I would give up everything I've ever wanted rather than fold to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's so extreme in his position.
All right.
No.
So
Of course. Why does that not surprise me?
now what you read?
You know, in thinking about the time we spent together so far, I have to say I'm still not clear on what would be something you really want to work on.
I think that makes total sense because we're not on the same page.
So my concern about her move here is that she's treating them as two people working together when they're not.
Well, is she unclear about, because I think what you want to work on is an individual question. And to me, there are things that Annie would be willing to work on. And I don't see that there's things that Mal would be willing to work on. So I'd want to address that one at a time.
Exactly. And so she doesn't address the question to one person. If you were to, what would you want Annie to focus on? Based on the idea that Annie is obviously more workable here than Mal, what would you encourage Annie to work on at this point?
Okay. I'd think about like the data in front of you. What's the answer you keep getting that you are having a hard time accepting? And the answer that she keeps getting is, I'm not interested in changing. Like that's what Mal keeps telling her a lot of different ways. And so she says she's initiated this therapy because she wants to renegotiate and she wants him to take her desires and perspectives as seriously as his own. And he's told her a lot of times, just in the clips we've watched here, he's not going to do that.
Yeah.
He's not interested.
Yeah.
And so at some point, like, your clarity comes from just accepting the data that keeps showing up. And I'd say, like, stop arguing with reality, you know?
Yeah.
At some point, like, you know the answer and you just have to live with it. You don't have control over whether another person changes.
She has, she's desperate for him to change, and she's overestimating how close he is to changing. So he's not even close to considering actually dealing with these issues, and she's treating him as if he's closer to that decision point than he really is.
Yeah, and it actually takes effective pressure off of him, because as long as she has more hope and desire in him changing than he does, and as long as that's more important to her than it is to him, he doesn't have to worry about doing it. Like, she's the one that is going to hold on to that. If she were to really accept the answer she's getting, she'd start to reconsider the ways she's engaging with him and how much energy she wants to put into a relationship with someone that is not going to take her that seriously and is not going to change. And it would actually be her detaching in that way and decentering him that would start to put some effective pressure on him.
I think it would be important for her to consider that he knows a lot more about what's going on between the two of them than he's letting on. So she keeps trying to explain things to him, hoping that by explaining something for the 26th time, it's going to change his mind. But he's really smart and really observant, and he knows a lot about what he's putting her through.
Yeah, he does.
So I know what I want.
What was that?
it's about that communication piece, that even though you're super, super supportive and the world's best husband, sometimes you're also dismissive, and where that leaves me when you're being dismissive. What do you want?
I want you to be happy.
No, what do you want out of therapy?
Babe, you have such riches of opportunity, and you use them to criticize the environment that provided those riches for you. It's like your statement that even though you're amazing, sometimes you're dismissive. How is that a problem? Like, is the goal to...
How is it? All right, I game. How is it a problem that I don't treat you like a person? Why do you have a problem with that? Why can't you just be a non-person?
Well, and he's being dismissive of the idea that him being dismissive is a problem.
I think he's incapable of seeing other people as people. So there's real brain functioning limitations going on. And it's so interesting because he's handsome and he's charming and he's wildly intelligent, and he's not capable of actually caring about other people or even seeing people as people. So when he looks at her desires and her feelings, they're nothing. He doesn't see them the same way as he sees his desires and his feelings. So his well-being is really important to him, and her well-being is not important to him at all. It's this massive gulf in difference in the way he approaches her.
That's one possibility, but another thing I'm thinking about is that the dismissiveness. So they both say that he's really supportive, and that he can be dismissive. So I'd want to understand, what is the support? I'm assuming finances is part of it, but I don't think it's the whole thing. And can we get into some specific examples of this dismissiveness? Because another possibility is there's some common thread between what brings out the dismissiveness that if you got more specific about it, you might be able to get some traction with him.
Yeah.
never be dismissive, like 0%.
He's reframing the issue as if I could just go from 1% to 0%, would that solve your problem? But it's not. The issue is he's at 100%. It's not. He's so smooth about making things seem to not be as they are, because he's not at 1%. He's at 100% dismissiveness, but he's just so good at distorting reality.
Pretty high. Well, and the other thing is, like, he's comfortable having a very extreme position around sex of, like, I'm correct and basically entitled to this experience in my relationship that no one really has, of every single day I want my partner to do all of the work of producing a fantastic, authentic sexual experience for me. I want that to happen every day, and I just think that's reasonable. Well, if he's got room to take that extreme of a position, I don't see it as any more extreme. In fact, I see it as less extreme for her to take a position of, yeah, I want 0% dismissiveness. That's what I want.
It's much more reasonable.
That's a fair thing to want.
Yeah, sure.
You may not get it, but there's not a reason. It's this whole thing she raises about he thinks what he wants just matters much more than what she wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's developed a skill over his lifetime of distorting reality so effectively that he just gets away with it almost all the time. It's probably really rare for him to encounter someone who can handle his moves and push back on what he's doing.
Yeah.
Has been threatening in one way or another to leave for a while. It's unlikely that I'm going to really dramatically change. You just have to make a decision.
But you're saying the problem resides in Annie. If Annie just was okay with that, you'd be good.
Well, yes, I think, yeah, sort of, yeah.
I have to say that's unusual.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to tell the story of why feeling dismissed, why is that? I mean, of course, it's difficult for everyone, but your story, like what is it for you?
Well,
in a way that hopefully Mao will care about.
I've had my share of sexual trauma.
Can you say more?
I grew up in New York City. I grew up, commuting. I grew up relatively independent, much more independent probably than kids are allowed to be now.
Eh.
And I felt very physically vulnerable. And I was reminded of that physical vulnerability and sexual physical vulnerability all the time from 4th grade on.
What happened at 4th grade?
I was touched inappropriately multiple times. I mean, I feel like me and my girlfriend, we were flashed all the time.
So it's like constant
Constant.
sexual intimidation.
Constant.
Mm-hmm.
And then in high school, there was definitely multiple incidences of coercion. And then I was date raped. Yeah, like right before we met. So it's not the most extreme, but it was constant.
Constant and awful. I'm just want to check with you, Mel. How do you feel about what Annie's described in terms of her history of like sexual intimidation and
I wasn't there to protect you.
I guess this is kind of one line of reasoning why you would carry a particular sensitivity to being dismissed or stepped over or disregarded. And your immediate response was, I feel protected.
Mm-hmm.
How do we go?
I don't think that's a good summary of his immediate response. So how would you characterize what he actually said?
Yeah, I'm not convinced that that's authentic. And I also think it's a pretty dismissive response because it's all centered on him again.
Mm-hmm.
This is about her life long before she ever met him. And he's not thinking or addressing what it was really like for her. And he's also not addressing what it would be like for someone who's lived through that to have the amount of sexual pressure and entitlement that he puts on her as part of the marriage.
Yeah.
So this idea that he would protect her from this, I don't buy it. And I think it's the wrong direction, even if it were true.
Mm-hmm. That move he made where he said, I wasn't there to protect you, it positions him as the noble protector and her as the helpless victim. Realistically, he's not the noble protector, and he does not protect her from this kind of energy, especially when it comes from him.
Yeah. So from that to when Annie experiences even like something similar to that with you, you lose empathy.
Mm-hmm. To begin with, she's never had an experience with me that's similar to those experiences.
Obviously.
Right.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Orna crossed her lead. Like, she was
What do you
talking
mean?
to
What do
him
you mean by
about...
crossing her lead? What does that mean?
She contradicted herself. So she was talking to him about... The lead was she's saying, Annie's going to have some sensitivity when she experiences anything that's even similar to this with you. And then he says, well, that's never happened. And Dr. Orna agrees with him and says, well, obviously, but that's a contradiction from what you just said. And it's not obvious at all that nothing that would feel similar has happened with him. So I think it was an error there.
It's actually obvious in the reverse, in that he obviously does direct manipulative and coercive sexual energy towards her. And that came out right at the very beginning of the video when he was talking about the birthday thing, and the sexual energy he directs towards her is that he views her not as a living, breathing, beautiful creature, but as a device that's designed to satisfy his sexual whims.
That's not true.
It is both true and untrue.
That's okay.
His move he just made is something he's done several times where he tries to he tries to make it seem like there's no such thing as reality. And so he tries to create this soup of ideas that like all there is all these various different perspectives and ideas, and there's no such thing as reality. Like, am I manipulative? That's not a question that can be answered. Am I mean? That's not a question that can be answered. Even though at the same time, he is the one who answers it and says, I'm not mean, I'm not dismissive, I'm not manipulative, and I definitely don't have any of this harmful sexual energy.
Mhm. It reminds me of when they were holding up the coaster, I think it was, and saying, you know, there's like, if you only look at this side, you think it's that. So when he says, well, it's both true and not true, then he's saying, well, there's two sides, but he goes on to push only one of them matters. So
Yeah.
It's true and not true. We're only going to talk about the way it's not true.
Yes. So
and that's what he keeps doing.
It's a constant distortion. It's a constant idea that like he's consistently presenting himself as open-minded and able to take in outside influence, and he's not able to take in any outside influence. He insists on shaping the reality in the room to fit something that feeds his own ego in a protective way with no consideration for Annie.
So at this point, I would be, again, trying to slow him down, and I'd try to get him to focus on what part of it is true. That's the part I want you to talk about. I'm not interested in how it's untrue. Let's talk about how it's true. What do you know about that?
Yeah, that's a brilliant move. I think we should end there. I would so love to see you work with Mao.
I do enjoy this kind of client, actually. So.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you for watching. This was part 2 of Annie and Mao. Hopefully, we will move on to make a part 3. And if there's any other couples in this series that you would like us to take a look at, go ahead and put them in the comments. And thank you for watching.
Thank you.